Change yourself, not others. A Buddhist insight. There is a scene that plays out in homes all over the world, every single day. A wife wishes her husband would put down his phone and really listen. A husband hopes his wife will understand the pressure he's under. A mother wonders why her son won't just take her advice. And that same son wishes his parents would let him live his own life. We look at the people around us, and somewhere deep inside, we make a quiet calculation. If only they would change, I could finally be at peace. And so we begin. We hint. We explain. We argue. We plead. We try different strategies. Kindness, patience, anger, silence. And yet, more often than not, they don't change. Or they change for a while, then go back to the way they were. The cycle continues. Expectation, disappointment, frustration, more effort, more disappointment. We exhaust ourselves. We exhaust them. And underneath it all, the suffering remains. Have you ever stopped in the middle of this cycle and asked yourself a different question? Not, how can I get them to change? But why do I want so desperately to change them in the first place? This is where our journey begins today. Not with answers, but with honest questions. And I want to be clear about something from the start. Turning inward does not mean tolerating harm. Sometimes wisdom requires us to speak up, to walk away, to protect ourselves. But even then, especially then, the clarity to act wisely comes from understanding what is happening within us first. So let us look together. Let us look beneath the surface of this very human struggle. When we want someone to change, the reason seems obvious. They did something that bothered us. They said something hurtful. They forgot something important. On the surface, our desire for them to change appears completely reasonable. Anyone in our position would feel the same way, wouldn't they? But if we sit quietly with this feeling, if we allow ourselves to look a little deeper, we begin to notice something strange. The intensity of our reaction often does not match the size of the problem. A forgotten anniversary becomes a 3-hour argument. An unwashed dish becomes evidence of a fundamental lack of respect. A casual comment becomes a wound we carry for days. Why? What is it about these small things that can hurt so much? The Buddha identified 3 forces that drive human suffering. He called them the 3 poisons: greed, aversion, and delusion. These are not abstract philosophical concepts. They are alive in us right now, shaping the texture of our daily lives. And when we look closely at our desire to change others, we find all 3 at work. The first poison is greed, but not in the way we usually think of it. Greed here is the endless craving for validation, for certainty, for control. When we want someone to change, there is almost always a craving underneath. We crave to be seen, to be valued, to be loved in a particular way. When we say, "I wish you would remember our anniversary," what we often mean is, "I wish you would show me that I matter to you." When we say, "I wish you would listen to me," what we often mean is, "I wish you would care about what I feel." We are not just asking them to change their behavior. We are craving proof that we are important, that we are worthy of attention, that we are loved. Life is uncertain. People are unpredictable. We cannot control what happens tomorrow, or what others will do, or how things will turn out. This uncertainty is deeply uncomfortable. So we reach for something we think we can control: other people. If I can just get this person to change, if I can just make them behave the way I want, then I will feel safer. But this safety is an illusion, and the craving for it never ends. The second poison is aversion, the pushing away, the resistance, the refusal to accept things as they are. When our wishes are not met, aversion arises. We feel frustrated. We feel resentful. We feel angry. The mind says, "This should not be happening. They should not be this way." Notice how much energy we spend in resistance. We replay conversations in our heads. We build cases against them. We hold on to grievances for days, sometimes years. All of this is aversion at work, the refusal to let reality be as it is. The third poison is delusion, and this is the deepest one, the hardest to see. Delusion is not ignorance of facts. It is a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are. There is a deep, often unconscious belief in a solid, separate self, an I that must be protected and made to feel real. When our attempts to change others fail, this sense of I feels threatened. If I cannot make anyone listen to me, if I cannot influence the world around me, then who am I? Do I even matter? This is the deepest fear. The fear that without constant reinforcement of our importance, the self might dissolve into nothing. And so we keep trying. We keep pushing. Because in some strange way, their changing would prove that we are real. But the Buddha saw clearly that this solid, permanent self is an illusion. What we call I is not a fixed thing. It is a process, a constantly changing flow of sensations, feelings, thoughts, and reactions. There is no one inside who needs to be defended. There is only this moment, arising and passing away. When we do not see this, we are caught in delusion. And delusion keeps the other two poisons alive. The three poisons feed each other, around and around, and we call this cycle suffering. When we see this clearly, not as an idea, but as a lived recognition, something begins to shift. We stop pointing outward quite so quickly. We become curious about what is happening within. And this is where the Buddha's teaching becomes practical, not just philosophical. If the three poisons are the root of our suffering, what is the way out? The Buddha did not simply diagnose the problem. He also pointed to a path. One of the things he saw with great clarity was this: you cannot walk with another person's legs. You cannot breathe with another person's lungs. And you cannot awaken through another person's mind. Each of us must do our own work. Each of us must take responsibility for our own heart. In the Dhammapada, one of the oldest collections of his teachings, verse 160 says, "Atta hi attano natho, kohi natho parosia." You are your own refuge. Who else could be your refuge? This is not meant to be harsh or isolating. It is simply a recognition of how reality works. No one can do your inner work for you. You can receive guidance, support, and teaching from others. But the transformation itself, the shift from confusion to clarity, from reactivity to peace, that must happen within you. The Buddha also spoke directly about our tendency to focus on the faults of others. In verse 50 of the Dhammapada, he taught, "Do not look at what others have done or left undone. Look at what you yourself have done or left undone." And in verse 252, he observed, "It is easy to see the faults of others, but hard to see one's own. One sifts out the faults of others like chaff, but hides one's own like a cheating gambler conceals a losing throw." These are not moral commands. They are practical observations. As long as our attention is fixed outward, on what others are doing wrong, on how they should be different, we will continue to suffer. Not because it is a punishment, but because looking outward keeps us from seeing what is actually causing our pain. This leads us to one of the Buddha's most profound teachings, the law of karma. In the Kulakama Vibhanga Sutta, he taught, beings are the owners of their actions, heirs to their actions. Their actions are their womb, their relative, their refuge. Every thought, every word, every action we take has consequences, and we are the ones who inherit those consequences. When we act from greed, aversion, or delusion, we create more confusion and suffering for ourselves. When we act with wisdom and compassion, we create the conditions for peace and clarity. But here is something important to understand. Karma is a mirror, not a hammer. It is not a tool for judging others or ourselves. The Buddha clarified that karma is primarily about intention, the quality of mind with which we act. We are responsible for our own body, speech, and mind. But results arise from many conditions coming together, not from a single cause. This is why humility and compassion are the wise response, not self-righteousness or guilt. When this teaching is truly understood, not just intellectually, but felt in the bones, something shifts. We stop blaming others for our suffering. We stop waiting for them to change so that we can be happy. We stop giving away our power. Instead, we turn inward. We take up the work that only we can do. This understanding leads us to something we must explore: the difference between turning inward and turning away, between taking responsibility for ourselves and ignoring the world around us. If we are supposed to focus on changing ourselves and not others, does that mean we should simply accept everything? Should we stay silent when someone is behaving harmfully? Should we tolerate injustice because it's their karma, or because we need to look inward? The answer is no, absolutely not. And the Buddha himself demonstrated this through his life. If the Buddha taught passivity, he would not have spent 45 years walking across India, teaching the Dhamma to anyone who would listen. Kings and beggars, scholars and illiterate farmers, saints and murderers. He would not have established a community of monks and nuns, trained thousands of disciples, or left behind a vast body of teachings. He was not passive. He was deeply engaged with the world. There is a story preserved in the Dhammapada commentary tradition that illustrates this. Once, the Sakya and Kaliya clans were about to go to war over the waters of the Rohini River. Both sides had gathered their armies and were ready to fight. The Buddha went to the battlefield himself. He stood between the two armies and asked them, "How much is water worth?" "Very little." "How much are human lives worth?" "Beyond price." The warriors paused. They looked at each other, and they put down their weapons. The Buddha did not stand aside and say, "This is their karma. Let them fight." He intervened. He spoke the truth. He acted. So the teaching is not about doing nothing. It is about the difference between two ways of acting, and this difference is subtle but crucial. One way of acting comes from a wounded ego, from craving and aversion. It says, "You must change, because your behavior is causing me pain. I need you to be different so that I can feel okay." This kind of action is fundamentally about control. It seeks to manipulate the other person into conforming to our wishes. And even when it succeeds, it does not bring lasting peace, because the underlying craving remains. The other way of acting comes from wisdom and compassion. It says, "I see that there is suffering here, in you, in me, in this situation. I will do what I can to help, to speak the truth, to set boundaries if needed. But I will not cling to the outcome. I will not make my peace dependent on whether you change." In the first case, we act from need. In the second, we act from clarity. In the first case, we are attached to results. In the second, we do our best and let go. In the first case, our inner state is agitated and anxious. In the second, it is peaceful and clear, even in the midst of action. The Buddha taught about a quality of heart called upekkha, often translated as equanimity. It is one of the four sublime states, along with loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. But upekkha is frequently misunderstood. Many people think it means indifference, a kind of cold detachment from the world. True equanimity is not the absence of care. It is the presence of wisdom. It is doing what needs to be done with a compassionate heart, while not clinging to the outcome. It is grounded in mindfulness and clear seeing, not in numbness or avoidance. From the principle of karma and from the spirit of upekkha, we come to understand something important. We can help others. We can advise them. We can model a different way. We can speak difficult truths with kindness. We can set boundaries when boundaries are needed. But we cannot control the results. Whether they change or not is their choice, their path. This is not cold detachment. This is seeing reality clearly. We are not gods. We do not have the power to force transformation in another human being. And clinging to the illusion that we do only creates more suffering. When we act from this place of clarity, something remarkable happens. Our actions become more effective, not less. Because we are not clouded by neediness or resentment. Because we can see the situation more clearly. Because the other person can feel that we are not trying to control them, and they become more open. Not always, but often. This is the difference between compassionate action and the attempt to control. One liberates, the other binds. So what does it really mean to change yourself instead of others? By now, it should be clear that this is not about self-improvement in the modern sense, becoming more productive, more successful, more likable. It is something deeper. It is about seeing clearly into the nature of your own mind and letting go of what causes suffering. The Buddha offered a practice called the Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness. In this practice, we learn to observe clearly the body, feelings, the mind, and mental phenomena. We watch them arise. We watch them pass away. We see that nothing is permanent, and nothing is truly self in the way we once imagined. The Satipatthana teaches us to look both internally and externally. But whether we look inward or outward, the purpose is always the same: to see impermanence and non-self, to abandon greed, aversion, and delusion. We do not observe others in order to judge them or control them. We observe to understand the nature of all phenomena, including the phenomena of our own reactivity. When you truly practice this, something begins to change. You start to catch yourself in the moment of reaction. You notice the tightness in your chest when someone says something that bothers you. You see the thought arise, "They should not be this way." And instead of immediately acting on that thought, you pause. You breathe. You observe. In that pause, there is freedom. Not the freedom to get what you want, but a deeper freedom. The freedom to respond with wisdom instead of reacting from habit. And here is something worth noting. When you stop trying to change others, when you turn your attention inward and begin to take care of your own mind, the people around you may begin to change. Not always. Not in every case. But often, relationships shift in ways you did not expect. Not because you forced it, but because your peace creates a different kind of space. When you stop pushing, they stop resisting. When you stop judging, they feel safe enough to look at themselves. But I want to be honest with you. This does not happen overnight. The patterns we are talking about, the craving, the aversion, the delusion, these are not surface habits. They are deeply rooted. They have been with us for as long as we can remember. Unraveling them takes time. It takes patience. It takes a willingness to fail and begin again, over and over. The practice of the Dhamma is not a quick fix. It is a path, and like any path, it must be walked one step at a time. Some days will be easier than others. Some days you will forget everything you have learned and react just as you always have. This is normal. This is part of the practice. What matters is that you keep going. Each moment you notice yourself blaming outward, that is progress. Each time you pause before reacting, that is progress. Each time you return to the breath, to the present moment, to the simple awareness of what is happening right now, that is progress. The Buddha said that greater than conquering 1,000 men in battle is conquering oneself. That is the supreme victory. Anyone who has tried to change a single deeply rooted habit knows how true this is. To transform the patterns of craving, aversion, and delusion that drive so much of our suffering, this is the work of a lifetime. But it is possible. Countless human beings have walked this path before and found freedom. So the next time you find yourself wishing someone would change, the next time you feel that familiar frustration rising, try something different. Instead of reaching outward, turn inward. Ask yourself, what is really happening inside me right now? What am I craving? What am I resisting? What am I afraid of? You do not need to have answers. Just ask. Just look. Just be willing to see. Remember, you are your own refuge. No one else can walk this path for you. No one else can see through your eyes or feel with your heart. But by training yourself well, step by step, breath by breath, you gain something that cannot be taken away. A clarity and peace that does not depend on whether the world bends to your will. And that, perhaps, is the deepest freedom of all.